Hello YouTube, this is Asatsu5. Saw some photos on Instagram that reminded me of back when I worked in retail. I worked at Academy Sports and Outdoors, which was a sporting goods store that covered everything from team sports, apparel, footwear, hunting, fishing, camping, and I was a camping sales associate. And I thought I would tell some stories of back when I was in retail. Now, this photo that I saw was from Cutlery Level, and he took a picture of this destroyed aisle that was in really bad need of zoning. What is zoning? Zoning is basically cleaning up the aisle and the sidekicks and the end caps to make them shopping ready. And this would involve putting stuff back on the shelf, right on the right peg, make sure it's priced correctly, and is facing front and pushed up to the front. You know, everything that makes the shopping experience easier for the customer. And the aisle in the camping department that was notorious for being complete devastation was the rain gear aisle, especially when it rained outside. What would happen is that when it would rain and people were in the store, they will go up to the rain gear aisle and they'll get a package with a poncho in it, or a rain jacket, and then they would open it, try it on, see how they liked how it felt, and then they'll take it off, drop it, move to the side, pick up another rain apparel thing, open it, try it on, drop it right where they're standing, and move to the side, and they'll go down the aisle and do this. And this sucked, because not only do you have these stuff sacks, and you have to get the right product in the right stuff sack, and you have to pack it in a visually pleasing manner, there were some rain jackets that had this very cheap, like plastic bags, and they ripped very easily. So once these product containers ripped, that was pretty much the end of that product. No one would buy it. We'd have to fold it and like tape the label on it and put it on the bottom rack, and it was just terrible. And these were adults doing this. This wasn't kids, being irresponsible. These were adults that were wrecking my aisle, and I hated it. It was terrible, and it happened every time it rained, and sometimes when it didn't rain, these adults would just drop right where they were standing these products and go down the aisle and do that. Let's talk about another story. In this series, I'm going to do rapid fire stories, and then when I get tired of talking, I will end the video, and then when I think of some more stories, I'll upload another video. This was especially troubling for me. The camping department also handled the camouflage apparel, because we had a seasonal section, and that seasonal section could be summer swimming stuff or fall winter hunting stuff, and we took care of that. And we had help from apparel that helped us out with it, but it was technically our responsibility. And this old rough and tumble Santa Claus looking figure, kind of big, had a belly, white beard, came up to me and asked me about the camouflage, and I walked into the camouflage section, and he proceeded to take off his button-up shirt, hand it to me. He was naked from the waist up at this point, and then he would try on, in the middle of the store, a camouflage shirt. Kind of looked at himself, and then he took it off, grabbed the shirt from my hand, tried it back on. Now, a shirtless man isn't the most terrible thing in the world, but it was definitely not expected. If I was at the coast, I'd expect to see a shirtless man. But to be in a retail store and knowing that we have fitting rooms that would be way more convenient, we wouldn't have to look at you. You would have a mirror to look at yourself to see if it fits properly. He could have went to a fitting room, but he didn't. He took off his shirt, handed it to me, tried on the shirt, put it back on the hanger, put his own shirt back on, went off and bought the product, which was weird. I didn't quite know what to think of it, and my coworker said that they would have just dropped the shirt and walked off, but I'm a people pleaser. Let's see some other stories. Had a kind of a reputation with pigeons in that store. My first experience with pigeons, I was wheeling in the deer corn during hunting season, and this pigeon flew out of the. There was this little cave in the deer corn that they burrowed into, and it flew out into the store. It was like, oh hell, a pigeon's in the store now. And so I looked in that hole, that cave. I was like, oh dude, there's another pigeon in there. So I promptly reached inside there, walked outside, and chunked it out. Um, excuse me. And that after I left, some people got on the brag board. It's this bulletin board that they'll put your name on, or a manager or team lead would put your name on. And at the end of the month, they'll put those names in a hat, draw them, and you can win a $10 gift card. I consistently got on the brag board and won $10 gift cards. I don't know if I was a good employee, but I at least portrayed myself as one. And so I was constantly getting on this board. Well, someone else got on the board because they caught the pigeon I released by accident. I don't know why I quoted there, but they were calling, and they're like calling different people, and they're like, "Hey, what do we do about these pigeons? Should we get a pellet gun?" Like, no, don't get a pellet gun. We don't need feathers and blood all over the place. So they decided to get fishing nets, and they stalked these pigeons. Much how they hunt puffins in Europe. I can't remember what place, if it was Iceland or Netherlands or Scandinavia, but there's a bird called a puffin, and they hunt them with nets. And they stalked these pigeons, caught them in a pretty violent manner, and then they released them. My second experience with pigeons, Academy has a vestibule. You got your front door, you walk in, there's this open space with buggies, and then there's a second entrance door. And on the inside of this vestibule, there was a pigeon just sitting there. And one of the managers and one employee was looking there. And I walked up, I was like, "Hey, what's up?" They're like, "Well, there's a pigeon there. We don't know what to do." I didn't say anything. I didn't warn them what I was going to do. I just ran over there. I didn't run. I just walked, got under the pigeon, jumped and grabbed it, and then threw it outside. As you can tell, I'm not very gentle with pigeons. They can fly, and they generally catch themselves before they hit the ground, unless you're at that funeral, and that dove didn't fly before it hit the ground. It didn't end up so well. The remix was hilarious, though. Anyways, I released the pigeon, and I got put on the board. I got a $10 gift card to a restaurant. What else? There was this guy, and he decided to stay after hours. He was a customer, a shoplifter, and he hid in the sleeping bag display, and he had a jacket that he peed in, so he wouldn't have to get up and go to the bathroom. And he would steal stuff. He had a Foot Locker nearby, and people would walk by and see this Foot Locker move to place to place. This was after the store was closed, and the night crew was there. And he finally took off with this Foot Locker, and he ran into the one guy who was walking out of the bathroom who was legally blind. We have one customer, or one employee who was legally blind, can't legally drive above 55 miles per hour, can't drive at night, which they didn't care too much about that stipulation. But the one guy that worked for us that saw this person was legally blind. And that was kind of interesting. So, my manager told me, "Austin, you might want to start checking the sleeping bags with a baseball bat." I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." And the reason why we had the baseball bat was because in that area that he was hiding in, we found an open package to a collapsing baton. And if someone has a collapsing baton, I want something bigger and more effective than that collapsing baton. And so we used baseball bats for about 3 months, at least while I worked there, to check the sleeping bags. I have a lot more of these stories, and I don't know how funny they are or interesting, but I'll make a follow-up video. But this is going to be the last story. I had a few different favorite employees. I had an ex-Marine that I hung out with, and he was hilarious. Had a very kind of twisted sense of humor, and he was into knives and guns and hunting, and we got along very well. But there was this one employee. She was a stunning Latina girl or woman. I mean, just jaw dropping. The first thing I thought when I saw her across this door was like, oh my God, she's gorgeous. And we are now friends. Imagine that. Story of my life. But, anywho, we're friends. And, anyways, I found out that she spoke Spanish. It's part of the reason why I wanted to learn to speak Spanish. Uh, so, anywho, I found out she spoke Spanish. Occasionally, we'll get Spanish speakers into the store that didn't know very much English, and I'd go up to her and get her to translate for me. And this was something we did on a somewhat regular basis. And I walked up to her one day. And I was like, "Hey, I got some Mexican people that need a translator. Can you translate for me?" She turns her head real quick, gets this really deadpan look on her face. She goes, "You think just because I'm brown that I can speak Spanish?" And she kind of stared at me for like 2.5 seconds, and then she goes, "I'm joking," but in a much more flirty, more relieving manner. I can't mimic her voice, but went from a very strong thing to a very flirty thing, and I was so relieved because I knew she spoke Spanish, but for at that moment I thought I'd done effed up. Because the last time I pissed off a girl, I ended up in the hospital, and I did not want to relive that experience. But anyways, uh, she walked, she quit eventually. We reconnected later, and now we're friends on Facebook. And, I'm thankful for our friendship, but, you know, wish it could be a little bit different. But that was something that really stood out to me. And later, when I caught up with her, I said, "Do you remember when I asked you to translate for someone and you yelled at me and said, 'You think just because I'm brown I can speak Spanish?'" And she was like, "No, I don't remember that at all." I was like, "Yeah, you scared the crap out of me." I said, "I knew you spoke Spanish, but at that moment I thought I'd done messed up." And it was one of those things where, it left a bigger impression on me than it did on her. To her, it was just another day. To me, I was about to, be sent to the hospital. But that was memorable for me. I got other stories to tell about working in retail. I've only worked in retail. Well, I worked at Academy for 4 years. I worked at a fireworks stand for several seasons, about maybe 5 or 6 seasons, and so I was in. That was a variant of retail, and I have stories to tell. So I want to keep this sub 15 minutes, and a little bit later I'll upload a next video in this series. I'm Asatsu5, and I'm out.